It being 6 p.m., calling to order this meeting of the Charter Review Commission. Will Adamczyk and Lisa Bazance will not be joining us this evening. If it's okay with everybody, I'd like to hold off on review of the minutes until we have full board, or at least 4 members. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. So we'll review. We have a couple things to review first. First thing is from town meeting, and I have not looked at this since town meeting. I don't know what's written on it. We had put together some papers to give people a chance to leave notes about what they would like to discuss about the charter. We didn't have a lot, but we had a few. And this will be posted as part of our wrap up so people at home can see what was left behind. And what we did was kind of just split it up into a few different sections and let people leave some notes. This one says more public presentations. Transparency, checks and balances on members of committees and commissions. The ability to restructure committees in the middle of the year. That again is under committees and commissioners. More town employees shouldn't be able to run for office. Yeah, town employees shouldn't be able to run for office. I think that's it for those, and I'll add that to the list that we have going forward. And the other thing is we have 103 responses from our survey to date, which isn't bad. This is by no means the end of the survey. It's still open. We'll still collect more. But just a quick run through of where we stand so far, if that's okay. Out of 103 responses, 58, so 56% think we should keep the current form of government. There was 24% who are interested in a town council mayor. So a little bit higher than I expected. Mm-hmm. But still, right now, it's a clear majority to keep as is. But we'll see how that transpires over the next month or so as we have this out in the field. If we keep the current form, 56% want the current form: town meeting, board of selectmen, town manager. This is it. Only 16% want to go back to a town administrator. Structured town meeting should use. 76% want open town meeting where everybody can attend. 17% want to go to a representative town meeting. This is the quorum question. 50% want to stay the same. 35% want to lower it, and only 15% want to make the quorum higher. Any notes so far?
No, that's pretty interesting.
What size select board should Abington have going forward? As of now, 56% want to keep it the same size. There is 30% interest in making it 7 members.
Wow.
I guess maybe it's worth taking a peek if there are any towns that do have a 7-member board of selectmen and how that works. Any board of these boards that should be appointed that currently aren't. The top one is the Zoning Board of Appeals, 50%. I'd like to see the zoning board move to an elected board instead of appointed. 42% would like the Finance Committee elected. And 36% would like the Conservation Commission elected. So the Zoning Board, like I said, has 50%, Finance Committee 42%, and then none of the above was 33%, and there's a smattering of others. Cable Advisory 22%.
I wish somebody would join. I have 3 openings.
Check if you agree with any of the following statements. Top 2, 58% think the town, the process the town uses to make appointments to boards and committees could be better. Something we've been hearing. Mm-hmm. 65% think the town can do a better job communicating with residents. Again, something we've been hearing. And 41% feel they don't feel well informed about what is happening in town. And then a few others for And that was at number 10. Oh, no. That's why this is going down. Not sure why this isn't going down. I have a Chromebook that I do not like. I hate Macs even more.
You love me, hate him.
All right, so while I'm trying to figure this out, again, any comments, questions?
I think that's pretty interesting that people feel as though we should be expanding to a 7, or at least have the look-see into a 7-member board.
Yeah.
And as far as the not having a represented town meeting and wanting to have an open meeting, I don't necessarily know if anybody thought about the open approach of having an open meeting that's still represented. That we could have representatives speak on their, district's area of what's going on. So instead of expanding the Board of Selectmen to 7, leave it at 5 with the town manager, and then have, a representative area to step up and make some educated decisions and comments that they can also bring it back to their district and say, well, this is what the thoughts are, and help explain. If you have people that are going to go to meetings, and I think our last town meeting is a good representation of people not attending open meetings. Our open meetings, it's the 3 of us, 4 of us sitting in this room. So I think that's a good representation of people not having the time to come to meetings, but still wanting to be informed. And the new website, hopefully, if people are going to jump on and take a look at it, that's a good way to look at it as well. But these are all live. You can certainly look at all these on, I believe they're posted on YouTube. So there's a way to be involved if you want to be involved, but let's think outside of the box as how we can get the information out.
But I think town meeting showed a big flaw when they started talking about item number 14. It took a long time to explain what they were doing. I think people didn't understand it, despite the trying to explain it, what was going on. I believe that there was a dislike from the outset of it, and I don't know if it was the right place for a decision to be made without having those responsible for presenting it get into a really deep in-length discussion about it. And I think, and I understand people being opposed to it, I have no problem with that, but I think if it was presented in a little bit better way, and you are now an hour into the meeting, and I don't know, I'm just questioning town meeting to begin with.
I think what I saw was the disconnect at that meeting. When we speak of nobody being in these meetings, and I think Liz Shea did a good job explaining what they were trying to do and what the changes would be. Was it, I don't want to say rushed. I don't feel as though it was rushed. They had enough meetings prior that people that were interested in hearing what was going on could have attended those meetings and understood. Just like every other meeting coming up to a town meeting, there are, many meetings before we get to that point. So the people that are going to want to stay in tune to what's going on are going to be on top of it. And sometimes it loses it in translation because so many people have talked about it. I'm sure the FinCom has talked about this line item hundreds of times through their meetings. They know exactly what they're talking about in all sides, and it makes it real easy for them to get flowing with it. And then you bring that to town meeting, and the people that have seen the material for the first time, whoa, wait, and you're almost starting back at square one because enough people aren't understanding what's going on.
Well, I can say as somebody who was in the middle of it, that we had discussed that issue multiple meetings over multiple months, and nobody showed up to talk about it, including those who should know better, and certainly had a lot of concerns all of a sudden. And they could have had a lot of their questions answered ahead of time, and they chose not to. But I think Pete's right that there needs to be a better way to present some of these questions, because they do get quite complicated at times.
Absolutely.
And it's my belief that it got even more complicated because there were multiple issues being discussed, like where the overlay district was going to be. I think you had that issue. You had the issue of having a marijuana growing facility to begin with. So we had a number of issues that were being played out, and it just, people started getting a little emotional, and that's fine, but it just, you know.
So getting back to the survey.
Sorry.
Nope, it's fine. These are important topics. Do you have any additional thoughts that would fit into any of these topic areas, government, etc.? We have 44 responses, and there are, I'll have to print these out because there's a lot. It's very wide ranging in some ways. A lot of stuff about appointing commissions and boards. A lot of makeup of committees and who should and should not be on it. Concerns about board behavior. There's a lot of stuff on here about boards, how they're structured, how they're organized, how they're managed. So it's definitely, apparently something that needs to be discussed. And then, is there anything we didn't ask about that you think would be improve the way that town is governed and managed and everything else? And again, there's a lot of comments in here about makeup. Some personal, some not. But I will certainly print these out and make sure we all have copies that we can look at. And number 10 was any sort of contact info, just keep informed. We do actually have 34 email addresses now. So moving forward, we'll be take these email addresses and let them know when meetings are and keep them up to date. But please still send this around. Still time to do it all. I think this is still our info gathering phase. Pretty soon we'll have to start switching over to the research and haggling phase. I think the goal is basically to have a document ready by the end of the year. And then that way January, February, March can be spent towards public hearings, legal review, finalizing, putting together presentation. But you know, it's April now, so we really have 7 to 10 meetings before we have to be at that point. So
Plenty of time, but a lot of work to cover.
it's time to start to figure out and narrow down what we really want to be focusing on, I guess. So those are the two review pieces of it. I will open it up to anything that has come to our attention since our last meeting, if there's anything that's kind of popped up. So anything else besides what we've already been discussing? What's on that spreadsheet? Anything from the audience? All right.
I think one of the things that the survey outlines, especially as it relates to the commissions and committees, it might be time that our town is getting to the point that it's busy enough that we start having some heads of the commissions. Let's have some agents of these committees, you know.
Coming to the meeting? Yeah.
Come to the meeting, but at the same time, like the Conservation Commission, we should have a conservation agent that's on staff that's able to do some duties and tasks, that's going to keep those commissions and groups focused and stay within their parameters. With the influx of people coming and going to boards, having somebody that can spearhead some of those things and keep everybody on track may be in the best interest of everybody.
More professionalized department in some ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More clear, concise communications with both interagencies, you know, from one committee talking to another, from the zoning board of appeals to the conservation to planning,
Yeah.
having people in charge of those things can stay on top of that communications and doing things like that.
Pete, anything else that's come to your mind in the past month?
Well, again, it's just the whole issue of town meeting it really came to hitting me on the head at the town meeting. Just the whole concept. And what, if anything, would be better.
I know that town meeting was certainly one that I looked through a different set of eyes as being part of this committee to look at those things and see. I love the fact that we can all gather and have our own opinions and get those expressed, but at the same time you can see how, for lack of a better term, sometimes we can't get out of our own way. And we appoint and hire people to do jobs, and yet we're not embracing them to do those jobs.
And the other thing is, I looked up the census of Abington, U.S. Census Bureau, 17,062 or something like that. 126 people showed up.
Yep. Yeah, so it's not even 1%. It's
Yeah. And
see what
of
our town
course-
election numbers are, because those have been pretty bad too.
I think that's the disheartening part about our form of government with the town meeting is that less than 1% of the people are making the decisions for everybody at, 17,000 we're saying?
No, so that's interesting. Would people be more likely to show up if this was a position they were elected to?
As far as a committee or?
If we go into a representative town meeting,
Oh.
do people feel more of a requirement if they've run for that position and been elected to it, than if they were just it's an open and they can go if they want?
I feel people like that wouldn't be staying in those elected positions very long if we were having, say we have whatever districts, I believe we've got 4 districts, 5 districts.
Five.
So from those districts, if you have 5 people that are elected and those people are having caucuses at any one of the halls, whether it be the VFW or Emerald Hall or wherever, they're having meetings with their district and those people are bringing their concerns to that person and that person doesn't show up at town meeting to represent them, I don't think they're going to stay very long in that position.
Yep.
Well, if you look at the number of people who vote for the select people, much greater than 126.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm thinking if we just had select persons and the town manager, and that's it. Because again, the voter turnout is much greater when we have voting.
So 2019 turnout was like 800 people. It was really bad. I'm trying to think if I have it up because I've been going through it. Here's the fun stat, I guess. The number of people who have voted in each of the last 3 town elections is about 400. Like under 400 people have voted in all 3 of the last town elections out of 10,000 registered voters. And I'll go a little bit of break, 2020 and 2021 were a little bit of odd years, but turnout was actually higher in those years than 2019 when there wasn't a pandemic. So it goes across all of Abington town government at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe all of you are on the good list, by the way. All right. Did anyone have a chance to look at anything out of town and find something that they particularly liked for our homework?
I will say I had some technical difficulties with my printer, but I did review some things specifically focused on the different agents, such as a conservation agent or those types of things. I know Hanover has one. I was going to look into Situate and pull some of those down so that we could have more discussion in upcoming meetings. But I would definitely forward that around to everybody. But I think looking at some of those of having people similar, and I'll use the example that we have a wiring inspector or a building inspector, having those people on staff as a go-to and a point will add to the consistency. I just think it seems like it'll be a real smart idea, but finding the parameters and those types of things, as well as I think an HR department would be immensely beneficial.
Yeah.
Because it would also facilitate all of those other things that we've already talked about.
Personally, I kind of wish we'd have a little bit stronger of a county involvement where you can kind of pay into, have the county have the HR department,
Right.
and then you're paying for that service of some way. But just because it's really hard for, if there's 28 cities and towns in Plymouth County, to have 28 different HR departments. I mean, that's just incredible overhead. But county government hasn't had the best reputation of being able to work in an efficient manner too. But I wish there was another solution, because there's conservation agent, town planner, HR departments, inspectors. These are all things that every town needs,
Right.
but it's really hard to carry an FTE for each one of those positions without starting to really now cutting into your budget.
I would think out of one of those positions, though, I think the HR would be more city or town dependent, because there are so many different moving parts in each city and town, whether we look at the teacher's contract, the police contract, the fire contract, town hall, just the intricacies within those different towns.
Yeah.
Having one central HR, it would be a nightmare to try to keep track of all that.
Yeah,
And the nuances.
Every town having different HR standards and
Right.
policies, and yep,
I didn't know 2 towns could share one.
they can, they can.
Because like Abington, Whitman did it, you know, geographically close.
Yeah, it'd be nice if that could work. I know we should try to share a veterans agent, and it didn't go as well as people would hope. But I wish there was a way to do it better, because just the overhead of having 361 different structures of government gets costly after a while. But you're not going to tell towns to merge
Right.
either. So
Not in our area, not.
2 of them escaped from us.
yeah. All right. I slacked. I did not look at any other towns this past month. But Pete, did you have any?
I hadn't, and I really didn't see anything that popped out at me.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
But again, I think, to me, in all of our conversation, it's coming down to people taking the time to become involved in the town. Because you see the same group of people involved in town politics year after year. And that's fine, but it'd be great to see a lot more participation.
Is there a way to make it, I hate to use this term, a little bit more snackable, so that you don't feel like the cost of entry to get involved and more interested is so high? Like, you really don't have to be sitting through meetings or watching I like the finance committee, but every meeting's 3 hours. I don't have 3 hours to watch a finance committee meeting. Is there a way to make that barrier of entry a little bit lower, so that if there's issues they're interested in, that you just can follow those issues? And I think the email system lets people pick and choose what they want to know about a little bit, but is there a way to, for instance, if we were to somehow digitize all board minutes and votes, so that I can just quickly go online and I can look at what the ZBA decision was, and then if I want to learn more, now I can go down a rabbit hole. But to kind of quickly look at what every board has been voting on, just a quick summary, I don't know. But I mean, is there some way of?
I would think that'd be something that we'd have to bring back to the webmaster and
Oh, yeah.
find out what the capabilities of the website. But I think you're right on.
Yeah.
Having those, even if it's an email subscription of after our meeting minutes, here were our votes taken, here were the meetings from our prior meeting, post them up, be able to subscribe to that particular group and receive those so that you can stay updated, I think would help as we get to that bigger town meeting. Are there still things that can come up in other groups that people may not necessarily see what's going on, but could be issues? Absolutely, but.
And when you say subscribe, you don't mean like pay a fee, just
No, I mean just like click subscribe to be part of that list of emails that go out when those minutes or messages become available.
And if you look at the website, there are certain committees that have up-to-date agendas, up-to-date minutes. There are others that they don't exist anywhere.
Yeah. Like this one.
And that's something that needs to be looked at.
All right. So, moving forward, we can come back to this a little bit, but moving forward, thinking of some next steps. The next meeting, I think there should be an effort to start getting people here. That we can put out this list of things that have come up, but to specifically request someone to come in, or some group to come in, or some type of people. For instance, we've had a lot of suggestions about some of the budget review practices, how that works. We've had suggestions about board and committee stuff. Do we want to request time with the Board of Selectmen and town manager? Do we want to request time with town department heads in general? Is there a preference to how we do that? Because that's really what we need to start to do, is start to sort these, work them individually, and figure out what the issue is. I
don't think I necessarily have a preference. Certainly going to see the seniors at the senior center during one of those days, maybe, they're having a lunch, and if we could have a posted meeting there and open it up to everybody else, they've got plenty of space. They're always welcome to have people in, and let them pick our brain a little bit as far as what we're thinking, and we can do the same to them in an open forum, and take some good notes, and maybe make a presentation of what we've received so far online. The majority of those people are probably not able to take that line on survey if they can even find it. No offense to them, it's just one of those technology things that either they get it or they don't, but it shouldn't be a reason for them not to have the information and or pass on their concerns or questions. So might be just one thing to consider outside the box as we try to get this out to the people.
I like that a lot. It's a good creative way to do some outreach. For instance, what's the festival in June? The Abington Celebrates.
Abington Celebrates. Yep.
But is there anything there that we can do?
I know they were doing a reenactment. Most of those guys are actors that come in from outside, so would that be a place that we could, for lack of a better term, set up a booth and be available to the townspeople that are going to come in and view that? Maybe, but I don't know. The fireworks, would that be something to have a handwritten survey that we could, see if people could poll, as opposed to, I know that worked out great at town meeting. Can we have a
bit bigger version of the QR? And,
just a little bit of packet that we can put together and say, hey, will you take 3 minutes and just breeze through this and try to give us some questions and comments?
Sure. We can all spend a little bit of time at the booth. So
Yep.
That would be a good one. Any other events coming up, Anita? I'm not sure about it.
Are they doing the?
That's the big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they also do the.
Town elections. We should at least have the QR link somewhere for that.
The
Bandstand.
The bandstand.
Yeah, they do
the concerts.
Concerts on a weekly basis for a while in the summer.
I'm sure that's something we could probably put out on their flyer, a copy of that, so when that goes out, or their email reminder.
At least on the first one in particular.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because once it gets to August, we need to start to have a
better handle on what we're doing.
Right.
But
okay, those are some good ones. So for the next one, I'm going to specifically, I think, I don't want the board to come in here and start, because the Board of Selectmen doesn't going to have a plan on how to make it better. So I think what I'll do is I'll send an email to the board through the chairman and the town manager saying, we have heard that this is being a concern, so please give us a suggestion by May 1st, May 15th, whatever timeline we can come up with, that we can talk about. Well, maybe also the way committee members are appointed, they have the ones that have to live within it, so how would they prefer that it's structured better so that they can make better choices? And then we'll see what that looks like, if that makes sense.
Well, one of the other questions to ask too is if we do make these all voted positions, how is that gonna happen during town elections? Is that gonna have an increased cost or things like that? You know?
Okay. And then I'll again send it out to all town employees and department heads to the next meeting saying, hey, we'd like to, anybody who wants to come is allowed to. Also going to request that Mike Frenny, the past chair, attend and see what obstacles he felt they ran into or what he would do better if he was in charge this time. Because the circumstances have changed so much, especially from the committee he led 20 years ago. So what maybe didn't make sense then, but maybe it makes sense now.
It's a 20-year change in the world right now.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So if it's okay, do you want to go through a few of these and see if there's something that we can start to get some traction on, at least for the next half hour or so?
Sure.
Sure.
All right. So the first one is just the town meeting, open town meeting, representative town meeting. This seems to have a little bit of leg to it, just in terms of let's just have a conversation and figure out what makes sense. So I'm just putting, to be discussed further. Form of government, board of selectmen, town manager versus mayor, town council. As I said, I think I'm surprised that there's been that many people interested in a mayor. I don't know if it's spite, actual interest, whatever, but I won't, guess, close that one out yet. We'll see if we continue to see that. And if 25% of people say that they think that we should do it, I don't think that's enough for us to really make a big look. But if that continues to climb for some reason, then
I think it's an interesting thought when you think about it, for the amount of people that we're seeing at town meeting, to elect and put somebody in charge and say, we're putting the town in your hands, do what's right by everybody.
Right.
I think maybe the view is it's gonna eliminate some of the special interest groups and we can get the job done, but we're holding a person accountable.
Or we could do, I grew up in Cincinnati, they had a mayor, but he was a ceremonial person,
Yeah.
period. They had a council and a strong town manager. Worked.
it's kind of how the city of Worcester works, I think,
Yeah.
where they have technically a mayor. Basically, the mayor is the chair of the city council.
Exactly.
It's really the town manager that
Right.
runs the show.
But if the town manager's not doing their job, the council has the authority to take care of that.
And then I think the town of Amesbury, which is that town that actually has a mayor, it's a strong mayor. He's the town manager, he's the town administrator,
Mm-hmm.
town executive, and he's doing all this stuff, and they have a council. But always worth. If that's something we want to learn more about. That's probably one of the better places to have that conversation, is because it's more of a town like us versus a Worcester or
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cambridge. Strong town manager versus weak. I don't know if we're hearing anything about taking away powers from the town manager versus keeping them. Skip over the appointment process for now. So what I was wondering is, we can't, if you have a person that's elected to office and they don't do the ethics training and they don't do the open meeting training and they don't do any sort of development, there's nothing you can do. You can't prevent that person from running again. But what I'm wondering is if you can keep track of that through the town clerk's office, and so that when that person's up for election, someone can go and say and see, oh, this person hasn't done any of these training modules. Maybe that matters in terms of whether I consider them. Because right now you can't go to the town clerk's office and pull this stuff up. No, not making sense?
I understand what you're saying. They're requested to meet certain criteria, and if they're not meeting it, then
Yeah, like there's very few reasons you can't have somebody on an election ballot.
Right.
And I'm not saying that just because you don't take, your open meeting law training that you shouldn't be allowed on the ballot. But there should be a way that some of these things should be documented so that if you want to know whether this person has been taking these steps seriously, that here they are.
I personally think it should be a requirement, period. If you don't do it, it's grounds for you to be dismissed, only because issues can be dragged into litigation forever because the individual didn't go, doesn't know, and I really applaud the town manager for getting this back into the spotlight. Because I've been in committees where issues like this have come up, not a big deal, but, you know, I could see, especially in some of the committees that we've, you know, like zoning board of appeals, for instance, if somebody failed to do it correctly, it could expose the town to a lot of litigation.
Mm-hmm.
Within the charter, would it be within the power of the town to make that a prerequisite before you pull papers for a certain
I
committee?
don't think you can do that. Like, there's very few reasons why you can prevent somebody from getting on the ballot. Residency,
Mhm.
maybe felon status, but I mean, it's very spelled out in like the state constitution.
Mhm.
I'd want to find out what those are, but you know, for instance, could you have on the ballot where, could you put someone's name in italics to indicate that they haven't done their training? They're on the ballot,
Mhm.
but there's, you know, their name is different because they haven't done their training.
Right.
I don't know. Or at least it's just a list so that if the three requisites are ethics training, open meeting law training, professional development opportunities. So that's, you know, taking a class with the regional, in my case, the regional planning group. They have all sorts of seminars on land use and site plan review and stuff like that. So like if I haven't taken those steps, you know, that's on file somewhere. It doesn't prevent me from running, but it means that someone can go and find out and say, hey, this person hasn't done this.
Mhm.
I'm taking that into
Or
consideration,
preclude them from chairmanship of a committee.
maybe.
That might, you know,
Yeah.
you still could be part, but you can't be the chairman or chairperson.
Mhm.
I mean, I
That
think,
alone might prevent people from not taking it. I'm joking, I'm joking.
do you have to take it, because you're a paramedic, you have to take professional development at a certain basis?
Every 2 years, we have approximately 48 hours continuing education per the state and the national. And then we've got regional requirements as well for our medical direction.
What about just being a firefighter if you weren't a paramedic or a EMT?
No, I mean, it's the way the state has been. A lot of guys take additional training. It all depends on what you have as far as time available to you and where you are with your family life and things like that. But we usually do a lot of on-duty training and things like
Okay.
that. So it's not necessarily accredited for the National Fire Academy, which is available to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
or the State Academy, but we do a lot of in-house training directly. So
Okay. Yeah, you know, I think school committees, they do a lot of training. They go to a lot of conferences, not a lot, but that's something to take seriously. They go to some conferences and other online programs. You know, even for the planning board, just because that's on the top of my mind, is that we can have somebody come into a meeting for an hour and lead something. Like, we don't have to go off on a Saturday at our own time.
right.
All right, so that's a good note for that one. Police and fire civil service. I definitely want to talk to some previous board members to figure out why this was set up this way. Because it's going to be coming up soon, I believe. Well, we just hired police, but I mean,
Which was not civil service.
yeah, the fire chief, I'm assuming at some point in the next 10 years is probably going to be retiring. So,
Which chief?
the fire chief,
I would assume that correctly.
yeah. So
He
it's
is civil service, correct?
He is civil service chief, yes.
I'm just trying to think if there's any other person that we can chat with. I guess just the people who are on that committee to figure out why they set it up that way.
Well, I think a lot of civil services just having those standardized testing to get a minimum training. So like right now, we have a recruit that's at the Mass Fire Academy. Every one of our recruits go to Mass Fire Academy for their approximately 12 weeks of training to get them up to the national standard of firefighter 1-2. That also includes some hazmat training and things like that. So that comes dependent on the individual department. Our department insists upon that that's where they go to get their training. So for us, it's been an easy mix to stay in civil service, continue those relationships with the state and make sure that's done. There are other departments that aren't civil service that still have access to the state fire academy and things of that nature, but that's outside of the hiring practice. Civil service is a standardized practice for hiring, which again, not having a HR department keeps nepotism and all those other things away through civil service.
There was one here, I think I brought this up, just the wording of if the moderator steps down because of absence or disability, to add the language or need for temporary recusal.
Yes.
Because technically, I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
That happened at the meeting, and I'm glad he did what he did, and I think it would be appropriate to put it in.
You need to double check to make sure it's not something that's in the bylaw, that wording, but I certainly think there's a legal argument to be made that that wasn't an absence or a disability, that it's a recusal. So make sure it's, which I think is appropriate.
Agreed. Would it be appropriate for us as we go forward to consider a deputy moderator and have that automatically in place?
Like elected,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's
I think that's a
interesting.
good idea,
That's very interesting.
because that would further take the moderator in, because he's the one who nominates the deputy moderator, and one could argue, well, he knows Joe because they're good buddies or something. And if both are elected, then it takes that all away.
We had discussed about the need for a sewer commission.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very brief conversation with John Stone, and he indicated he feels like it's still needed. So I want to invite him in just to get the understanding of what the benefit would be. And part of me is like, could we do a joint water and sewer commission, and just give the duty to the water commissioners, because they're kind of halfway there anyway, and just before or after their water meeting, they have a sewer meeting too, or something like that. I don't know if that'd be too much, but I definitely want to hear. This was by John Stone. We had mentioned changing the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board of Abington.
Mm-hmm.
Any feelings about that? I think a lot of towns are trending this way. And then that way the members are referred to as a select man, select woman, select person. Okay.
Sign of the times adjustment, I think that's an easy one.
Even though we haven't had many women on the board, it's probably worth
Mm-hmm.
doing. I think, was Will looking, did you have conversations with the library director, or was Will doing that? I think Will was
doing
that. Okay, so we'll hold off. Planning board terms was something else we discussed. Right now it's 5 members elected for 5-year terms. If we wanted to either increase the size of the board, change the terms of the year if we're allowed to. I don't know if we're allowed to. Is that like one of those weird committees where it's set in statute?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like a lot of towns it's a 5-year term on the planning board, so I don't know if that's a statute thing. I'm just trying to think, my personal experience, 5 is a good number, but, is 7 better? I don't know. Does that bring in more voices, or is it just more chaos?
I think it depends on how they're brought in. Are they specifically staggered? I know we stagger the elections for the Board of Selectmen based on terms. Having that planning committee together for 5 years, you can understand where the the plan and consistency will hopefully continue through, but if they're all, same 5 people are on same 5-year cycle, that could all go out the window in 5 short years, as where if you stagger them, you could.
Are all
Gains
5
that.
members fully voting members? Okay. No, there's some that aren't.
Yeah.
I've never understood that either.
So, yeah, so school committee is 5 members, board of health is 5 members. Conservation is like, that was a huge board. It's,
But not all of them have,
no,
I don't understand that.
yeah, it's, I can't remember 5.
It's a
vote
7
or-
and 2.
Oh, you're on it, I'm
And 2
sorry.
are non-voting.
Why have them on?
Getting experience.
I would assume experience and/or in the event of somebody's out, or we can need to do a site walk and not everybody's available, we can have a couple people that are on and at least share their experience and expertise.
Because technically there's 5 members of the zoning board, only 3 vote. But it's, if they miss a meeting, they can't vote on that issue, so that's why you have the alternate, is to, they can step in. So it's, some of the rules are strange. But we don't have any 7-member boards except for library, I believe. Library 7?
Yeah. But, and that's, didn't you say that was state law? Something like that?
Might be. Alright, review us. Library personnel, that was from Will 2. Henry DiCarlo mentioned about extending the board minute approval from 60 days to 75 days, which I think is reasonable. Because then would also clarify that committee needs to make sure where it's posted afterwards. Because I think it's technically it's mentioned,
In the library.
but it could be more specific.
It's library.
Yeah. But it doesn't say who. It just said minutes should be.
Right. And there's no consequence on them not getting done.
Right.
And again, if you go to the library, you'll find some committees are great and some, you don't even have a book for some. And to me, the better place would be to put them online.
Still need someone to actually go through and upload it though.
Right.
Yeah.
But Nancy does it very quickly.
And Mr. DiCarlo had already also mentioned about intervals of the bylaw review committee. So right now it's intervals of not more than 5 years from the date of adoption of this charter, but as he pointed out, that as soon as this is done, there should be a handoff basically. So make the language, immediately upon completion of the charter review process, the bylaw review is set up, off they go. And then at one other point prior to the charter review, the next charter review, the bylaw committee meets again. So, I mean, yeah, it's twice in 6 years basically, but don't always need a lot of work. Town manager qualifications, we'd had some discussion on about just expanding it to give some wiggle room in case the town manager did not have a college degree but had sufficient experience. So for instance, Bill Gates doesn't have a college degree. You can go through, there's all sorts of very famous business people with good management experience that don't have college degrees. It's something you would want them to have, probably, but should that be an immediate disqualification if there's other reasons why there would be sufficient? I think we saw a good example where we had a very qualified candidate with lots of experience. He just didn't have the full degree yet. And then he got it within
Right.
6 months. So, we pulled out the idea of what other activities a town manager could take part in outside of this community. And I've seen in a couple other towns very similar language to one we currently have, which is basically not to be involved with anything unless they have approval in advance by the Board of Selectmen. I don't know if we need any other limitations, but for instance, if a town manager is living in Plymouth, or let's say Weymouth, and wants to be part of the Weymouth 400th anniversary celebration as an official town committee, Is there a problem or conflict with him doing that if he has the Board of Selectmen, or her doing that if there's a Board of Selectmen are okay with it? Do you necessarily want them on that town's finance committee or something else? I don't know. But if you have any thoughts. I think those are most of them, and the other ones are kind of the ones we talked about today, so you haven't had a chance really to think about it much. But a lot of them also start to fall into the whole how committees are appointed and structured and managed.
Mhm.
And then the budget process is another one. And a lot of, I'd say almost half of these just kind of fall into one of those two categories. So we're clearly seeing a pattern forming. So,
Which is good, it'll give us direction.
yes. Anything else? Otherwise, I guess I'll send an email around to figure out when our next meeting date can be.
Okay.
Generally, we've been doing, this is the third Thursday. Does that still generally work?
That's good for me.
So the next one would be the 19th.
I'll figure it out on my side, but
All right, so I'll send around that date, see if that works. Send those invitations. Paul, could you reach out to the senior center about maybe putting together a lunch or making an appearance there, or figuring out what would be the best way of doing it?
Sure.
Yeah, just to see what kind of they think would work the best. We can do the old dog and pony show.
I'll call Suzanne.
Excellent. Anything else for the time being?
not that I can think of.
All right, I guess we just continue to kind of poke around other towns, see if there's anything that jumps out at you in terms of better ways of doing things. I know I've said before, I was kind of hoping that town council would have a little bit more direction in terms of, you know, what the best practice is or what's been emerging as kind of the preferred way of doing things. But there must be some resource that kind of says this is the new cool thing to do. But, in the meantime, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any
Seconded.
second? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.